The court said. And the prosecution may call its next.
Mr. Horton said. The government calls Giacomo Mattioli.
The law clerk said, "Please pull the microphone very close to your face and raise your right hand."
Witness sworn.
The law clerk said, "Thank you."
The court said. Please be seated. State your name and spell it. Also draw the microphone close to you.
The witness said, "My name is Giacomo Mattioli, spelled G as in George, Iacomo, and the last name is Mattioli.
The court said. You may inquire.
Mr. Horton said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Giacomo Mattioli, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows. Direct examination. By Mr. Horton.
Good morning, Mr. Mattioli.
Good morning.
What do you do for work?
I have a Ferrari dealership.
And how many Ferrari dealerships do you have?
3.
Where are your Ferrari dealerships located?
California.
Where in California?
Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, and Westlake.
And Mr. Mattioli, what is Passion Rosa, LLC?
It is the legal entity that owns Ferrari Beverly Hills.
How long have you been selling Ferraris, Mr. Mattioli?
25 years.
Where is Ferrari headquartered in Italy?
Maranello.
What relationship, if any, do your Ferrari dealerships have with Ferrari in Italy?
I am Ferrari official franchise dealer.
And what does it mean to be an official franchise dealer for Ferrari?
Well, we have a franchise agreement in place, so we represent the factory in the market. So we have the ability to purchase a new car at the discount price and we retail them.
You said, we represent the factory in the market. What's the factory?
Well, we represent, technically, Ferrari North America, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Ferrari SPA, which is the factory in Italy, yeah.
And what does the factory refer to?
The Ferrari SPA, yes, the Italian company.
And what sorts of dealings, if any, do you have with Ferrari SPA in Italy?
Well, I have some dealings with some special cars that we purchase directly through them.
And what do you mean by special cars?
Typically not street-legal car, purposely built for the racetrack, so race cars.
What does it mean for a car not to be street-legal?
It means that it does not comply with the rules and regulations and the homologations that are required to be street-legal car.
And where can a Ferrari that's not street-legal be driven?
On the racetrack, typically.
Mr. Mattioli, at your Ferrari dealerships, what are consignment services?
Consignment, it's a form of an agreement that we enter with the seller and that, expressed a desire to sell his car, and we work together, advising him on the best marketing tactics to sell the car and the price point of selling the car.
And what's the purpose of selling a Ferrari through consignment?
Typically you maximize the return to the owner, to the seller,
Mr. Mattioli, what is Ferrari Corse Clienti?
It's a department within the Ferrari factory.
And could you spell that for the court reporter and the jury, Corse Clienti?
Sure. CORSE, and then separate word, Clienti, CLIENTI.
What does Corse Clienti mean?
Racing client.
Racing client? You said Corse Clienti is a department in Ferrari. What does Corse Clienti do?
They are in charge to organize and promote this program. Several programs they have under their control enhance the Ferrari client experience. They sell purposely racetrack-built vehicles. And they organize events around the world for the owners to enjoy their vehicles.
Can anybody participate in Ferrari Corse Clienti programming?
No. They need to be selected by the factory, by Ferrari.
And how does somebody get selected by the factory?
Well, I don't really know all the criteria. I know that as a practical. That you submit the name and then they goes on the waiting list, typically there's a waiting list. And then the factory decides who to pick from this list.
Now what is the XX program at Ferrari?
The XX program is under the Corse Clienti department. It's a program to allow the clients to drive this specific vehicle that was built for the racetrack. And it's called FXX.
And what is a Ferrari FXX?
So a Ferrari FXX is a car that was developed based on a street car, the LaFerrari. Ferrari LaFerrari, that's the name on the vehicle. And it was, developed, again, for the racetrack, so they add the roll cage and modify the car in many different ways, and it's, again, built only for the racetrack.
And how fast can a Ferrari FXXK go?
Over 200 miles, yeah.
What training, if any, is required to drive a Ferrari FXXK?
Well, yes. There is training required because you're driving on the racetracks and you need to get familiar with the behavior of a race car. And slick tires and etc., so there are driving schools specifically, designed for that. And Ferrari has a driving school itself.
You referenced slick tires. What do you mean by that?
Oh, the tires developed just for the track, so there are no groove, They have particularly high grip in the turns. They just need to be properly warmed up.
And Mr. Mattioli, if I could just ask you to bring the microphone a little closer to your mouth for the court reporter and the jury.
Okay.
How often, if ever, do the slick tires on a Ferrari FXXK need to be changed out?
Depends a lot from the kind of performance you're looking for because, obviously the newer tires gives you higher performance, but typically you change it. It depends on the number of kilometers you're going to run in a day, but, typically once a day when you're on the track.
And how much do those tires on the FXXK cost?
20, I'm not sure cause I don't sell them directly, but I think it's 2,500.
Mr. Mattioli, about how many Ferrari FXXKs have been manufactured?
Ferrari never disclose a total number. I speculate about 40.
And about how much does a Ferrari FXXK cost?
When it's new or the current price?
Well, what's the range of what a Ferrari FXXK costs?
Currently, right now.
Sure.
I think it's between 6 million to 6.5 million right now.
How are these Ferrari FXXKs bought and sold?
When they're new or pre-owned?
Well, let's start with new. How is a new Ferrari FXXK bought or sold?
Okay. So new, again, Ferrari would launch the car, would unveil the car. And dealers will submit prospects, submit names to the factory, to the Ferrari factory. And they will pick and choose who would get the car.
And how is a pre-owned Ferrari FXXK bought and sold?
Pre-owned, it's a little different. Some cars they come available in the marketplace. They get advertised, but the preferred way for the Ferrari is to sell them through them. And so anybody that has a car that is available for sale should notify the Ferrari factory, the special department. Yeah.
And what's your understanding as to why Ferrari prefers to sell pre-owned FXXKs through Ferrari?
Well, they like to know who's gonna purchase the car, and it's a sort of a club, so, They support the car, then they prepare the car, they store the car. So they just want to know who they're dealing with, yeah.
Mr. Mattioli, have you ever participated in the purchase or sale of a Ferrari FXXK?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, could you please pull up what's in evidence as the stipulation that's marked GX Stip 8? And if you could please publish it. This is a stipulation regarding documents. It's in evidence. In relevant part. It says that the parties have agreed that the exhibits that are listed in column B of the stipulation were lawfully obtained by the government and are authentic records of the entity listed in column A. That were made at or near the time by, or from information transmitted by, a person with knowledge of the matters set forth in the records. Such records were kept in the course of a regularly conducted activity. And it was the regular practice of that entity to make the records. Ms. Loftus. If you could go to the second page of this stipulation. That's fine. Thanks. And the entity column in A. The second line from the top reads Ferrari SPA. And the exhibits associated are GX801 and GX802. Ms. Loftus. We can go to the third page, third numbered paragraph, please. It says. The parties further agree that this stipulation, as well as the government exhibits listed in column B, may be received as government exhibits at trial. And Your Honor, at this time pursuant to this stipulation, the government offers GXBR 440 and GX 802.
The court said, they are admitted.
Government's Exhibits 802 and BR 440 received in evidence.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please publish GX 802?
The court said, is the stipulation itself in evidence?
Mr. Horton said, it is, Your Honor.
The court said, okay.
Mr. Horton said, and can you please publish this and show the witness pages 1 and 2?
By Mr. Horton.
Mr. Mattioli, what is this document?
Purchase agreement.
And purchase agreement for what?
For a FXXK EVO.
And what's the date of this purchase agreement?
May 18, 2021.
Mr. Horton said, can you go to the second page, Ms. Loftus? Mr. Mattioli, who has signed the signature line above the seller?
Me.
And what was your role in this transaction, Mr. Mattioli?
I facilitate the transaction. The owner at the time desired to sell his car and I consequently informed the Ferrari factory that, the Course Clienti program, that we had this car for sale.
Below your signature line on the same page, it says the purchaser and it says Stichting Administratiekantoor Stilweereis. What role did this entity have in the transaction, Mr. Mattioli?
I assume the buyer.
And what is Stichting Administratiekantoor Stilweereis?
No idea.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you could please go back to page 1 of the purchase agreement. And if you could blow up the paragraph numbered 1. Mr. Mattioli, could you please read this paragraph?
Sure. This is to confirm our agreement pursuant to which we agree to sell you. And you agree to purchase our vehicle Ferrari FXXK EVO car chassis number 240860, the car, or FXXK, as described on Schedule C.
And Mr. Mattioli, what is chassis number 240860?
It is a VIN. It is a vehicle identification number.
And what is a vehicle identification number?
So every car that's built has this individual number. They're born with it.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you could zoom back out and then highlight paragraphs numbered 2 down just above the number 3. And enlarge that, please. Mr. Mattioli, this says the agreed purchase price is $4 million. Do you see that?
Yes.
Below that paragraph it says, the agreed price shall be paid as follows, a non-refundable deposit equal to $500,000. Do you see that?
Yes.
And after that it says that will be paid upon Ferrari Course Clienti XX program team technical check of the car to forward to the buyer for his approval. What is the XX program team technical check of the car?
It's a pre-delivery inspection to make sure the car is in good condition.
Below that the line says the balance equal to $3.5 million will be done not later than 15th of June 2021. Do you see that?
Yes.
Mr. Mattioli, is this a typical payment structure for this kind of deal?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, could you please go to page 2 and zoom in on paragraph 11? Mr. Mattioli, could you please read this paragraph?
As requested by the car maker, Ferrari SPA. You are requested to sign the Schedule B hereto which governs a certain number of issues regarding, inter alia, warranties, use, transfer concerning the car.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please take us to page 4 of this same exhibit, GX802, and briefly click through pages 4 to 6. Okay. If you could take us back to page 4, please. Mr. Mattioli, what is this document?
This is a statement of Ferrari SPA statement.
And what role did this document play in the transaction for the FXXK?
Oh, this is required by them. It's a Schedule B they require to be signed.
And how often in your 25 years dealing with Ferrari have you seen a document like this?
This is only when you deal with special cars like this with Ferrari, the Ferrari statement, yeah.
Under the statement, it says, the undersigned, being the purchaser of the FXXK EVO car. Chassis 240,860 from the seller. Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you enlarge the homologation in paragraph 1, please? While she's doing that, Mr. Mattioli, what is homologation?
Homologation is the term that describes where a car, it's street legal and complies with the rules and regulations of the country where the car is homologated.
And can you please read the first sentence of paragraph 1?
Yes. As stated above, the purchaser understands that the FXXK EVO does not meet current safety and emission standards for street-legal vehicles in any country.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you go to page 5 of this same exhibit, GX802. And please zoom in on the section that says transfer. And Mr. Mattioli, if you could just read the first 2 lines. Start with number 5.
In the event of transfer of the FXXK EVO, the purchaser agrees to immediately inform Ferrari of the identity of the transferee.
And Mr. Mattioli, what is the purpose of this provision?
To inform the factory of any change of ownership, this specific model.
And does Ferrari require that of every car it sells?
No. Again, this is a statement only for the specifically built Corse Clienti cars.
And why does Ferrari require that the Corse Clienti cars, why do they require that the owner notifies them if ownership changes?
Well, I think they want to know, are they dealing with the car most of the time? Store at their facilities.
And why are these cars mostly stored at Ferrari's facilities?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Why are they mostly stored at Ferrari facilities?
Because they are supported by them. So the Ferrari technician they work on the cars are at the factory, the cars gets managed and maintained by them.
Mr. Horton said, and Ms. Loftus, if you could please take us to page 6 of the same exhibit, GX802. And zoom in on the signature line, the date and signature line. Thank you. Mr. Mattioli, whose name appears under the signature line?
Mr. Gov't.
And do you know who that is?
No.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you could take us to page 20 of this same exhibit, please, GX802. By the way, Mr. Mattioli, the document we looked at earlier referenced an FXXK EVO. What's an FXXK EVO?
It's a special built only for track purposes from the Ferrari factory.
What difference, if any, is there between the FXXK and the FXXK EVO?
Yes. The EVO was the second series of that model. So first they had the FXXK came out. And then the factory produced few additional units and also made available a kit to upgrade the Series 1 cars into an EVO.
Looking at the screen in front of you on page 20 of GX802, Mr. Mattioli. The header says FXXK EVO chassis number 24860. Do you see that?
Yes.
And is that the same chassis number as the one involved in the transaction you handled?
Yes.
And what is depicted on this page of the document?
The car.
And is this the car that was in the transaction you've been testifying about?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, could you please display what's in evidence as GXBR 440 at page 13? Thank you. Mr. Mattioli, what is this document?
This is a receipt of funds.
And who received the funds?
Ferrari Beverly Hills.
And who are the funds sent by?
Fiesta Property Developments Ltd.
What was the date of this wire transfer?
May 26, 2021.
And what were these funds paying for?
This was the deposit for the FXXK EVO 24860.
Do you know if Fiesta Property Developments is?
No.
Mr. Horton said, you can take that down, Ms. Loftus. If you could please put back up what's in evidence as GX802 at page 28. And if you could zoom in on the email that starts about 10% down from the top on page 28. Mr. Mattioli, what is this email?
This is an email from me to an executive at Ferrari SPA.
And who is Adalberto Catabriga?
He's the gentleman in charge of the special sales within the course clienti.
What's the date of this email?
June 15, 2021.
What's the subject line?
FXXK EVO chassis 24860.
The email starts, Dear Cata, thank you for your email and your time on the phone. While we understand that the delay in closing has been caused by factory's inspection, we are currently facing a buyer's default as per agreement. What's a buyer's default, Mr. Mattioli?
When the buyer doesn't fulfill his obligation according to an agreement.
And what was your purpose in sending this email on June 15th?
Well, soliciting the, conclusion and the funding and the successful completion of the transaction.
Can you please read the email addresses that you sent this email to?
Catabriga, Adalberto, adalberto.catabriga@ferrari.com. Alex Sultani, asultani@skyviewcapital.com.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Mattioli. You can just read the name next to the email address, unless there isn't one.
Oh, okay. Bali, Francesco, Gandini, Matteo.
And what is the last email address?
There is no name.
Okay. And it says ukistruhome@gmail.com?
Yes, correct.
Mr. Horton said, Thank you, Ms. Loftus. Can you please put up just for the witness and the parties what's marked as GXBR 1604? Mr. Mattioli, what is this document?
This is an email that I received.
And what date did you receive this email?
It says June 15, 2021.
What relationship, if any, does this email have to the one we just looked at that you sent that day?
It's a reply from this guy to my email.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, the government offers GXBR 1604.
Ms. Strofa said, No objection, Your Honor.
The court said, It is admitted.
Government's Exhibit BR 1604 received in evidence.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you could zoom in to the top of the email, please, the first email in the chain.
By Mr. Horton.
Who is this email to you sent from, Mr. Mattioli?
Can you repeat the question?
Who sent you this email on June 15th?
It says milesenukistruhome@gmail.com.
And can you just read the email that he sent you that day?
Sure. Dear all, I don't understand this email. We are trying our best to be patient and move the deal forward ASAP. We've been waiting to pay the rest of the invoice for weeks. I understand the factory's delay and I am very supportive to Ferrari. However, seeing this email from Ferrari Beverly Hills is very unpleasant. No one is trying to default anything here.
And Mr. Mattioli, what, if anything, was your reaction to receiving this email?
I don't really remember.
And what, if anything, did you understand was the sender's role in the transaction?
I didn't. I was surprised, I think, to receive this.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please put up what's marked as GXBR 802? It's in evidence. And at page 27. And if you could zoom in on the email from Mr. Catabriga to Mr. Mattioli and the others. Mr. Mattioli, this is an email you received the same day, Tuesday, June 15, 2021. Do you see that?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, and Ms. Loftus. If you can attach, if you can zoom into the paragraphs, having said that, and, please sign the statement here. Mr. Mattioli, the paragraph in the middle says, having said that. I am attaching a statement confirming the deadline for the balance on Friday, June 18, 2021. The operations for the transfer of the FXXK car to Switzerland will begin as early as tomorrow morning as per contract. Mr. Mattioli. Why was the FXXK car in this transaction transferred to Switzerland?
The car was under a bond.
And which party to the transaction decided the car would be transferred to Switzerland?
The factory, the Ferrari.
And which party, if any, was the factory representing in this transaction?
the buyer.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you can please take that down and put up what's in evidence as GXBR 440 and go to page 8. And then just zoom in on the, thank you. Mr. Mattioli, what is this document?
It's a receipt of funds.
And who received the funds?
Ferrari Beverly Hills.
What was the date of the funds transfer?
June 16, 2021.
How much was sent to Ferrari Beverly Hills on June 16, 2021?
$3,500,000.
And who sent the $3.5 million to Ferrari Beverly Hills?
Fiesta Property Developments.
And what transaction did this funds transfer relate to?
Was the balance of the amount on the FXXK EVO.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you can please take this down and put up for the witness what's marked as GXBR 1601. Mr. Mattioli, what is this document?
This is an email from my CFO to Adalberto Catabriga.
And what, if anything, is attached to this email?
It's called a bill of sale.
And what's a bill of sale?
The bill of sale is the document that we provide because on the race car, there is no title. So it's in lieu of a title.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please go to, actually, sorry, Your Honor, the government offers GXBR 1601.
Ms. Strofa said, no objection, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit BR 1601 received in evidence.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, if you could please take us to page 7 of the exhibit.
By Mr. Horton.
Mr. Mattioli, is this the bill of sale for the FXXK transaction you've been testifying about?
Yes.
The buyer line is blank in this version of the document. Did this transaction ultimately go through?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, if I could just have a moment, please.
The court said yes.
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Loftus, if you could just highlight the buyer field on 1601 at page 7. I'm sorry. The buyer field with text to its right on top of that. And on the final bill of sale, Mr. Mattioli. What was the name of the buyer entity?
Fiesta Property Development.
Mr. Mattioli, we looked at an email you received on June 15 from milesonukistruehome@gmail.com. Did you ever meet Mileson in person?
Not to my knowledge.
Did you ever speak with Mileson on the phone?
No, I don't remember ever speaking to him.
And what, if any, due diligence did you do as the seller's representative in this transaction?
In this transaction we haven't done any due diligence because the buyer came directly from the Ferrari factory.
Is that typical in a consignment sale?
I wouldn't say it's typical in consignment sale. I would say that when you go through the factory and they choose the buyer, then you just rely on the Ferrari factory.
Mr. Mattioli, did anything about this transaction stand out to you?
What sense?
Was anything about it unusual to you at the time?
Not really, no.
Mr. Horton said, if I could just have one more moment, Your Honor.
Pause.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Mattioli, when was the car delivered to the buyer, what year?
No, it was subsequent to the transaction the car was transferred to Switzerland. I don't recall the date.
Mr. Horton said, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
The court said, cross-examination.
Ms. Strofa said, thank you, Your Honor.
Cross-examination. By Ms. Strofa.
Good morning, Mr. Mattioli.
Good morning.
The car brand that we're talking about is the Ferrari, correct?
Yes.
And this particular Ferrari FXXK, you would agree with me that it is a very exclusive car, correct?
Correct.
And even if I had the money to purchase it, I would still have to be vetted by Ferrari before I could buy it, correct?
Correct.
So there could be 50 people with the same amount of money trying to buy this car, and Ferrari factory would pick which of the 50 people would be allowed to buy it, right?
Yes. I mean, there's a waiting list. I don't know if it's 50.
Well, of course. Who doesn't want a Ferrari, right? So the value of this car per year, does it tend to increase or decrease?
Tend to increase.
Now, you testified about this. What did you call it, cliente? What is it called?
Course cliente maybe.
Yes. Is that like a program at Ferrari?
Yes.
And what is that program about?
The program is about enhancing the client experience relating to the track activities. Racetrack activities.
So I'm going to come back to the racetrack activities. The waiting list to get into this cliente program is also long, correct?
There is a waiting list.
And this person that the government kept asking you about Milesungwa, right? You remember many questions about Mr. Milesungwa on direct?
Yes.
So do you sitting here today know how far back Milesungwa has been a customer of Ferrari?
No idea.
If I told you he had been a customer since 2011, you would not know?
Mr. Horton said, objection, calls for speculation.
Ms. Strofa said, I'll rephrase. I'll withdraw that and try again. Before you came to testify here, you reviewed all these names with Mr. Horton, correct? This man right here?
What names? Sorry.
Milesungwa, Fiesta Properties. You reviewed those names with him, right? When you prepped.
Yeah, we went through those names.
Did you by any chance check to see how far back Milesungwa had been a Ferrari customer?
Mr. Horton said, objection, mischaracterizes the testimony.
Ms. Strofa said, it's a question of whether or not he checked how far back Mr. Gua, my son Gua, is a customer. It's a question.
The court said you may answer.
Did you check?
No.
Did the prosecutor ask you to check to see how far back Milesungwa had been a Ferrari customer?
No.
Then you talked a little bit about something called the Caso Pilota. Is there such a thing?
I'm not sure I spoke about Caso Pilota, but yes, there is such a thing.
Could you tell the jury what that is?
Yes. Caso Pilota is a program. It's a driving school that is run by Ferrari to further develop the driving skills of the Ferrari clients.
And do they also participate in the track events?
Who?
The Caso Pilota.
I don't understand the question.
I will try again. Now, let me ask you this. There was a purchase request made to the Ferrari factory. Correct, for this car on consignment, right?
I would assume so. I didn't see the request.
And your dealership happened to have a car that matched what the factory was looking for, correct?
Yes. We had a car in consignment. And I immediately notified Ferrari factory department that we had this car available for sale.
And you work closely with Ferrari factory, correct?
Well, I work with Ferrari factory since many years.
Exactly. And you trust them to do their job, correct?
Yes.
And they trust you to do your job, correct?
I would think so. I don't know. I hope.
Fair enough. But Ferrari factory and you were trying to make sure that the sale happened, correct?
Yes.
And could I just have 802, Government Exhibit 802 back up? You remember the prosecutor asked you questions about this document, correct?
Yes.
And this is a very standard document, right?
Yes.
Could I have it made bigger, please? And you see how there is a date filled in. That's what you filled in, correct?
Yes.
And if I could just have page 2. You were listed as the seller, correct?
Yes.
And then below that there is a purchaser. I can't read that very long end. And then at the end it says still we rise, correct?
Yes.
And when you received this document, you saw nothing unusual about it. You just moved to the next step of the sale, right?
Correct.
You did not reply back and say, what is this purchaser company or what is it or anything like that. That was not part of your inquiry, right?
Correct.
Now, you testified on direct something about how the car is stored at a Ferrari facility, right? You remember that testimony?
Yes.
And it is very common, is it not? For the car to be stored at a Ferrari facility because the car needs as much attention as a 1-year-old child, right?
Mr. Horton said, object to form.
The court said you can answer.
I don't know if it needs that much attention. But I have 3 childs of my own, so I know that subject. Yes, the car. It's common to be left at storage at the factory for this specific model.
And when you testified that the car was transferred to Switzerland, do you really know if it actually made it to Switzerland?
No, I wasn't there.
So you don't know where the car is now, correct?
Right now, no, definitely no.
And you definitely don't know if it ever even left to go to Switzerland, correct?
Correct, yes.
Now, the prosecutor asked you questions about this default issue. If I could go back to page 802 at page 8. And you were asked about this email exchange, correct?
Yes.
And you see that portion where it says, while we understand that the delay in closing has been caused by factory's inspection, right? You see that?
Yes.
So it's fair to say that it wasn't the buyer's fault that things were delayed, right? It's the inspection that caused the delay. Is that a correct reading by me?
Well, it was a combination, I think.
Where does it say it's a combination? Does it say, while we understand that the delay in closing has been caused by a combination of factors including factory's inspection?
No.
So then you get a reply to this email, right? Could I show him the reply and the jury also? And you said that you were surprised by the response because it is from somebody named Mileson, right, on the top?
Yes.
And it says, I don't understand the email. We are trying our best to be patient. And he's telling you. He is being patient, right? Mileson is being patient?
Yes, that's what he's saying.
And you read the email, right?
Yes.
You're on the email chain, right?
Yes.
You don't reply and say, hey, buddy, you're the cause of the holdup, right?
I don't know who he was.
Right. So you don't say that. You don't say it's a combination of factors. You are contributing to the delay. You don't say any of those things to him?
Is that a question?
Yes.
So the question is, sorry, if I reply to this email. Is that the question?
Yeah.
I did not reply to this email.
And you did not reply to any of the other people and take Mileson off the email chain and say, hey, who is this guy replying, right?
No.
And could you tell me, sir, who is skyviewcapital.com? Who is that?
That in this transaction was the seller.
The seller, right?
Yes, the consignor.
So the seller knows who Mileson is because the seller doesn't reply either saying who is this Mileson person, right?
Mr. Horton said, objection, Your Honor.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
So the question was again, sorry.
The question was, you said you were surprised by receiving this email from this person. My question is, nobody does anything about this surprise, correct?
I don't know what people did.
Well, you were on the email chain. You didn't get any email from anyone else saying anything about this person named Mileson UK's true home, right?
I think I receive an email back from Catabriga.
Saying what?
Thanking us for being patient and giving us more instruction for the completion of the deal.
Thank you. We can take that down. Now, you testified that according to you, you believed that the Ferrari factory represented the seller in this case or the buyer.
Mr. Horton said, objection.
The court said, you may answer.
They represented at the time the buyer.
So Ferrari factory told you that it had a buyer that was interested, correct?
Yes.
Who makes the commission on the sale, Ferrari factory or you?
I made the commission.
Ferrari factory has no financial incentive in the sale, correct?
Not that I know of.
Exactly. So Ferrari factory's only job is to make sure that the seller is Ferrari appropriate, right?
Correct, yeah. I would describe that.
And Ferrari is extremely particular about who it sales its cars to, right?
Yes.
So Justin Bieber, for example, can no longer purchase a Ferrari because he changed something on the Ferrari's car model, correct?
I'm not aware of such a thing.
No. You are aware of this program where Ferrari encourages track days so that the purchaser of these kind of cars can enjoy the car in a setting, correct?
Yes.
And there are 5 track dates a year, is that right?
I think it changes every year. There's a schedule, could be 5, could be 6, 7.
And on that day Ferrari organizes like a huge event, correct?
Ferrari promote the day at the track, yes.
And they invite people from the Clienti program, correct?
Yes.
They have race car trainers who teach the owners how to drive these cars, correct?
Correct, yes.
People bring their friends, family, colleagues, just for that event, correct?
I've seen that, yeah.
And there are many people who buy properties around these tracks so that they can participate in these events, and they can be promoted for companies or for their colleagues. Correct?
Mr. Horton said, object to scope.
The court said you may answer.
I'm not aware of that.
Now, on these track dates, Ferrari brings the cars to the tracks, correct?
Yes. I would say most of the time Ferrari takes care of the transportations. But it's not 100% of the time, most of the time, yeah.
The court said, where does an owner keep the car?
The witness said, well, typically if you are active in the program, meaning you like to drive the car, you would leave the car at the factory so they can prep it, manage it, maintaining. Other owners, the more collectors, they just take the car home with them.
The court said, so those persons who want to race the car must always go to Italy?
The witness said, no, they actually have events all over the world.
The court said, go ahead.
By Ms. Schrofa.
Is it fair to say, sir, that there are certain dealerships like yours or dealerships in Europe who also host events for these cars?
No, we don't host events for this specific cars.
Now, the Ferrari factory makes sure that they give services such as storage for the car, correct?
Yes.
They help you maintain the car, correct?
Yes.
And if you want to be taken to or from the track, they make sure that all of those arrangements are taken care of by Ferrari, correct?
Yeah, Ferrari provide the services.
And what is the telemetry program, do you know?
Telemetry.
Yes.
Yes.
Could you tell the jury what that is?
Okay. So typical in a race car, to improve the performance. You analyze a lot of data, and telemetry is a program that allows you collect this data that will help you to improve the performance. To go faster.
And when these track events are held, they're filmed, and the film is given to the persons who attend. Is that correct?
I would say every car is pretty much equipped with camera, say GoPro camera just to give an example. Not to use the brand, but to use an idea for it. So, yes, every lap is filmed, and together with the telemetry. You can then show the driver what it can improve, where it can brake, where the line of the turn is, give instructions.
And this particular car, you know they showed you a photo and everything. I'm not going to pull that back up again, but I just want to make sure I understood your testimony clearly. Sitting here today, you do not know if the car ever left the Ferrari factory, correct?
Mr. Horton said, objection, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Sir, when you reviewed documents from Mr. Horton, you sent him documents, correct?
Yes.
You sent him emails, correct, such as the ones we saw now?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that you did not send him any document confirming any transportation of this car to Switzerland, correct?
I don't remember if there was a shipment slip that was bill of lading. There must be something.
Only if the car was actually transported, correct?
Mr. Horton said, objection, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
You didn't give him any bill of ladings, correct?
Mr. Horton said, objection, asked and answered.
The court said you may answer.
I don't remember.
Ms. Schrofa said, thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
The court said, any redirect?
Mr. Horton said, no further questions. Thank you.
The court said, so an individual who buys this particular model, is that person usually the driver or no?
The witness said, I would say for the majority, yes, it's the driver.
The court said, thank you. You may step out.
Witness excused.